Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Welcome to it. Great to have you in on Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal's in. And getting ready as Wednesday's here. We get cranked up for Nebraska-Ohio State. Real Red reaction following Nebraska-Ohio State. We're in the rail yard pregame Saturday. The Hail Varsity offices. Postgame, Real Red reaction also from Hail Varsity. And don't forget, come see us at Kincaidor Brewing on Friday, 4 to 6, Roadshow Friday. We're in studio. It looks Big Ten weather-ish outside. And let's roll our sleeves up. Numbers to get in, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can find us on Twitter. Give us a follow. And feel free to comment on Twitter. Can do so at Schmidt_radio or at Herbal Essence is how you do that on Twitter. And can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. More tweets in about where the hell the website or the show is on the website. Elijah Herbal and company. And Pat with Hurrdat Media, man, we are on multiple platforms for the podcast. So that means iTunes for sure you can subscribe to. That means you can get us on Spotify. That means you can get us on Google Play. So a couple of things have happened. I will have a side of beef by the time 2021 starts from Elijah and me doing steak and beer bets every Friday. 2, you can just hear the show about any time, any way you want. And, of course, you stream us ESPNLincoln.com with our great affiliates out west and in northeast Nebraska. So let's talk about success. Huh? Let's talk about it. Mike Babcock will join us in 20 minutes. Mike Schuart from Wilderness Ridge in about 40 minutes. Brad Edwards and Jacob Padilla. So we're loaded up with some football talk. Success Saturday is what? ... Let's fill in the blank. Let us fill in the blank. Right now, Elijah Herbal's kind of rubbing. He's going Indiana Jones. He's rubbing the cheek and the chin, and he's pondering. The simple answer is, well, don't get killed. You can play hard, and it may not matter. Do you have an older brother that just pummeled you in the driveway? Do you have a younger brother that pummeled you in the driveway? I'll let you guess which answer is mine. What is success on Saturday? And the easy answer is don't get killed, don't get embarrassed. Listen, man, they're going to go play hard. They're going to try and go play well. And it may not matter. It may be tight. It may be back and forth. It may keep you're interested because it's football, for God's sake, and it's Nebraska football. But I'm interested no matter what happens Saturday. I mean, you've seen the worst of Ohio State v. Nebraska. Is that fair? Or will Saturday be a new uh-oh? A lot of you were in the stands for 2017 where some of the dudes on the team wanted to go back inside the gates of Nebraska and head back to the locker room before kickoff. A lot of you remember 2016, 62-3. Is Saturday a repeat of that just because of the sheer talent difference? Could be. I mean, you want to talk about a team that's loaded on paper, even though they don't return a ton of starters. That snowball could be heavy and looking for some people to harm if it gets going downhill. So how does Nebraska keep that giant snowball of Ohio State from squishing them, from running them over? can you get out of Ohio State's way? Listen, it's a football game. It's an opener. It's going to be freaky crazy with, if you listen real close, you may be able to hear Urban Meyer between plays on set talking about lasagna recipes because no one's there. I'm anxious. I'm excited. Yes, for football, but I'm really intrigued to see what we get out of Nebraska football. So let's talk success. And I do believe this with my whole heart. And this isn't just a Nebraska thing. This is an Ohio State thing with their edge, with their anger, and with their statement capability. They are going to try and go put up 60 to 70 points on everybody. Easier said than done, but that is their mindset. They're pissed about last year against Clemson. They're pissed at their stupid leadership in this conference, and they are taking no prisoners at all. They are going to try and embarrass. They're going to come out of the gates with the pedal down. That's their want. And they're going to try and annihilate everybody because they are an angry football team, because they almost didn't get a chance to go compete for a national championship. I've likened it to, think about Nebraska 94 if you didn't have a football team in 94 that tried and did finish business after what happened in 93, all right? That's kind of the same feelings going on in Columbus after last year's loss against Clemson, okay? I don't know what Ohio State and LSU would have been like, but Ohio State felt robbed that Clemson was there. So that is the reality for the rest of the Big Ten. And let's be honest, you're going to be keeping up with the Joneses if you're Ohio State. Impressions have been made. You've seen Alabama look a little teetery defensively and then get it right in the second half against Georgia. You've seen Clemson come out and just stomp and storm, and they just put up 73. They had fun last weekend against Georgia Tech. They pulled Trevor Lawrence when he had 404 passing yards to match the area code of Clemson, South Carolina. They let the freaking punter play backup quarterback and complete passes. I haven't seen anything like that since the Buffs put in their outside linebackers to play tight end against Kansas back in the day. So what is success on Saturday? This is success. Nebraska's offensive line is able to take steps forward from last year and run the freaking football, okay? Is that 5 a carry? Is that some rushing touchdowns? They're able to get good yards on first down. They're able to get yards on short yardage situations. Adrian Martinez plays within the offense. It's as simple as that. The guy goes out and makes the simple play. I think a very real thing Saturday from Adrian last year, trying to do too much at times, didn't have a lot of help around him. He forced a lot on top of being injured. So how does he react and kind of find a groove with a run game and with a better offensive line to just kind of play within the system? How does that work out for Nebraska offensively? And when Luke gets his snaps, and he will, because you're going to go into this game with a game plan, any chance to go Buster Douglas here, and Nebraska is going to use Luke McCaffrey, and they're going to mix it up. They're going to have new wrinkles. They just will. They have to. They have to play unpredictably. Not be sloppy and crazy and careless and reckless, but you have to play with an era of unpredictability here with what you want to do with your system. Ohio State doesn't know what the hell you're going to do. They kind of think they do, but they don't have really an answer. They can watch a little bit of McCaffrey from last year, but it's a different offensive line. Everything is different in 2020. And the other side of this, too, is Justin Fields. He wants a Heisman. He wants to come out of the gate on fire. Does he try and do too much? Tim May talked about that with us yesterday. He's a guy that's seen Ohio State for 100 years. And if he brings it up, it's always a danger for great players. You're told to be great, and sometimes you go over that line of trying to do too much. Nebraska saw it last year with their quarterback play. From time to time, Nebraska saw it with their outside linebacker play versus just doing your job. Does Adrian go do his job, and does Justin Fields stay in his lane as great as he is and take what's there defensively against the Nebraska defense? I think that's key. And the other thing, when we talk about success, and you can put a point total on this thing, it can be 28, it can be 24. The Scott Frost offense, you've seen it be beautiful and brilliant against Minnesota, against Ohio State, down at Central Florida against Auburn. Can the offense move the football? Can Adrian get enough time to complete some passes? And can the run game put Adrian and this offense in second and doable, and third and very doable? I don't know, because of who they're going up against and how good all these dudes are supposed to be on paper. All right? I know that the 4 out of the 5 starting returning offensive linemen could make the Saturday kickoff very long for Nebraska's front seven. They can line up and run the football. But I know that there's only 4 starters back defensively. I know Scott Frost can get a little creative with his offense. Got 7 new guys making their first career start. Not necessarily first career start, but meaningful snaps with 7 new starters. Go after it. They may not be as locked in as they need to be because it's been COVID 2020. So I think Nebraska can hang around, but Nebraska is going to need some breaks. Nebraska is going to need some turnovers. Nebraska is going to need Ohio State to play a sluggish first 2020 game, and Nebraska is going to have to lean on their dudes that are very and vastly experienced on the offensive line, and hope that their improvement and that group work on the O-line and Mills, the way he finished the season, comes in, and Nebraska can just go play football. The talent difference is real, and Ohio State may be able to just turn it on at whatever point they want, and again, here comes that giant snowball. So those are some things. When I talk about success, Nebraska can still get worked by 20 to 24 to 28 points, but if that thing happens in the fourth quarter where there's some momentum plays that are very real in college football and it gets flipped around and you just get drowned, that isn't just a Nebraska problem. That's a Big Ten problem the rest of the 2020 football season with Ohio State. They're going to do that to people. They're gonna flip the switch and turn it on. And you saw it and felt it last week, second half of the Georgia-Bama game. Some bad plays, flipped momentum. They were turnovers, and Alabama did their thing, right? I mean, that thing was 24-20, and it ended up 41-24. And Georgia's a good football team. And so success to me is Nebraska moves the football. Nebraska gains some confidence even in a loss. And Nebraska kind of sees, oh, yeah, there's Adrian Martinez. There's Luke McCaffrey. There's that offensive line. There's the run game. And there's dudes in the front seven that are doing their job every play. And ultimately, you got to make Ohio State earn this thing, and you're better against the run. Seems obvious, but that's my, bullet point list as we talk about what success is on Saturday. Are you getting killed? Is Ohio State going to say, yep, time to attack Nebraska's edges for a third straight year in the run game? Justin Fields has dropped back and has performed 4 choruses of YMCA or One Mississippi, Two Mississippi Rush, because he's had that much time to throw. Those are some of the little things that maybe you can see that help make you and paint you in a better light towards Nebraska 2020. And I think some of you think Nebraska is going to be okay this year. 4-4, 5-4. They play better. They got to play better against Ohio State. They can still get beat, and you can still get beat 38-21 by a national championship team. But just scrap 4 quarters, move it on offense, move the football on offense, and be better against the run. Those are just some early takes I have on what I'm going to be looking for Saturday, and probably reassessing Saturday with the Real Red Reaction show.
Yeah, I'm with you. But it's less, to me, Nebraska playing well all 4 quarters. I want to see them make Ohio State work for it for 4 quarters.
Right.
Last year, Ohio State could take the foot off the gas after the second quarter. 3 years ago,
after the option drive ended in an interception.
Essentially, yeah.
Done.
Essentially, yeah. Ohio State could just go on cruise control for the rest of the game. I want to see Nebraska make Ohio State work for it. What's that going to take? I think it takes holding your own at the line of scrimmage. Whenever you have so many experienced offensive linemen coming back, you got to at least hold your own on that line of scrimmage and make that a stalemate, because that Husker offense can keep you in it if you can do that. And that's all I want to see from Nebraska.
Yeah, and I think you're not far. I think Nebraska's offense can keep. They can help Nebraska hang around in this. But again, that front 7, man, defensively, what are you going to get out of it? What are you going to get out of it? We're going to talk with Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity next. What's he want to learn Saturday? Great to be with you on Wednesday with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Brad Edwards coming up at 5. Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. We're at Kincaid Brewing Friday, 4 to 6. Roadshow Friday down in the Haymarket, just south of the rail yard. Good folks from Nebraska. Incredible beer. The Hail Varsity beer that's now in cans, the Hail Ale, is very tasty. Couple of news and notes. You have Antonio Brown is eligible to play after Week 8. The Seahawks making a push for Antonio Brown to sign him. Pat Chambers, don't call him Tom, I guess has resigned from Penn State. He did a heck of a job at Penn State a couple of years ago, got him to the tournament. So that is interesting. We'll keep you posted. We say hi to Mike Babcock, historian, author, Hall of Famer. He's covered Nebraska football for many, many years, done it at an unmatched level at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, let's talk about Saturday, bud. How are you?
I'm doing okay, Smitty. Saturday football.
Man,
hard to believe.
I hear the joy in your voice. It's in my voice. Elijah's like, yeah, let's get some football. Elijah's got eye black on already. So
he's ready to roll.
He is, man. He's going to put on that Southeast jersey and go block somebody. So we were talking about, success on Saturday. And I hate, because I think Nebraska fans really dislike the moral victory side of things as well. But there is kind of a journey in progress here with this Frost era, that things aren't, there's not been a same starting point for him with what he took over, and now it's year 3. So let's see where the offense is at in year 3. Let's talk success, and I'm interested. What do you want to learn? What do you think you can learn on Saturday about Nebraska?
Well, you guys broke it down pretty well, but the one thing I want to see how as you did, I want to see how the offensive line performs. And you've got 4 returning starters and Bryce Benhart probably. Let's see how that offensive line goes. That's important. And I think the key thing I want out of the Ohio State game is for Nebraska not to beat itself, not to make mistakes, not to turn the ball over, to play mistake-free football. And if you come away from that, having done that, and the offensive line just performs well, and you perform well the same way defensive line, you've got to start up front on both sides of the ball. I think you can feel good about what Nebraska does, regardless of what the outcome is, because I don't see Nebraska going into Columbus and beating Ohio State. It's an Ohio State team that really has a lot on the line. I mean, Ohio State's in the discussion for the playoffs, and even though it's getting a late start on the season, I think Ohio State is going to be prepared to make that run, try to make that run. So, guys, what I want out of Nebraska is sound play. Get the best out of what you've got, and don't hurt yourself, and see where that leads.
Mike Babcock's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. You're right on it. Don't beat yourself. Don't have brutal penalties. Don't just put yourself in a disadvantaged situation, and that's happened in some of the bigger games. When we talk about, think of the Iowa losses, right, where there's been penalties and missteps and the turnovers against some of the big name teams. They don't. Ohio State, Penn State. I mean, go down the list of the who's who in the big. Michigan, right? I mean, the first kind of big road game for Frost in season one. I mean, you know how that thing started. Very short order, 3-4 plays in after a 30-yard gain by Stan. It's a tip ball and interception, right? So when it comes to unpredictability here or new wrinkles or the McCaffrey factor, I think Scott can get really, really creative, and I think that can kind of help keep your offense hanging in. And is that something you think we see? Yeah, I think we see McCaffrey, but let's talk about just the scope of how much you may junk it up to keep Ohio State off balance.
Well, I think you can do some things like what you're suggesting here. There's some trickery or whatever you can employ, but you have to be fundamentally sound first. That's to me, that's the first most important thing, is to be fundamentally sound. If you're fundamentally sound, then you can do some of these things, and it will benefit you. But if you go into the game thinking, well, we're just going to do things that are just off the wall, and you're not fundamentally sound, I just don't think it's going to work. As you indicated too, I said turnovers, penalties, the same thing. You've got to avoid those. But the fundamentals of it are the important thing, and then you can build off that. Because if you got the team, the opposition thinking in terms of what you do fundamentally well, then the things that you do that are out of the ordinary are going to be potentially more successful.
Chatting with Mike Babcock here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, if the Huskers are going to hang with Ohio State on Saturday, which side of the ball do you think is going to have to step up? Is it going to be the defense slowing down that powerful Ohio State attack led by Justin Fields, or is it going to be the offense scoring enough points just to keep with that attack?
Well, I think there's probably more pressure on the defense, because now Justin Fields, he threw for 41 touchdowns last year with 3 interceptions. Is that right?
That's the ratio.
I mean, that's incredible. That's how do you deal with that? And then he's mobile on top of that. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the defense because again, you've got offensive line. You've got 5 returning starters, and 4 of them are probably going to start with a young guy in there. And you've got an experienced quarterback, a veteran quarterback, who is now, I think, healthy compared to what he played last year. He was less than 100%. And you've got a committed running back in Dedrick Mills. And we know what Wandale can do. And I like the consistency of Cade Warner, and he's healthy. So I think the pressure is probably going to be on the defense to try to stop that Ohio State offense. And there's additional pressure on the defense because if Nebraska plays the way Scott would like, with that up-tempo offense, move quickly, the defense can be on the field a lot anyway. So there's more pressure. There's the pressure, I think.
I think you're right, and I look at Nebraska. They can play loose, they can play fun and free because of just I mean, they can't be sloppy or not attention to detail, but you can go play free. I mean, the target isn't on you. Now, I want to flip it around and look at Ohio State and just kind of their anger with the situation they're in, and they want to take it out on some people. I know Penn State is looming. Maybe we're too soon to get into this discussion, but, what's the respect level like from Ohio State towards Nebraska, specifically the way the last several games have gone? With Penn State, your de facto Big Ten East championship game waiting for you on Halloween.
Well, I think from Nebraska's point of view, and the way Nebraska has to approach it, and I would assume that Ohio State's going to have to approach things the same way, particularly if you want to be a playoff team, it's got to be week to week. I mean, and that's one of the things that I saw with Tom Osborne. It was week to week. Never mind what the next one is going to be. This is the one that you have to focus on. If Ohio State is to be a legitimate contender to get into a playoff situation, I think you have to have that mentality that it's this week it's Nebraska. We'll be concerned about Penn State next week because we've seen already in this college football season, we've seen how bizarre it has been. We've seen good teams go down, get upset. And I think there was an element of that. Maybe there's an element of that. Maybe it's just the pandemic and the changes in the way you have to approach things. But we've seen some unusual upsets, I think, and we're going to see some more of those things. And I think, except for Clemson, Clemson puts up 73 on South Carolina, and it doesn't seem like anybody's going to stop Clemson. But you've got to be week to week. You've got to pay attention to what's at hand. And, maybe that's difficult with Penn State coming up, but I think that an Ohio State team that wants to be in the playoffs has to be a week-to-week approach to things. You can't look beyond your next opponent.
Mike Babcock's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, we'll get you out of here on this. What do we see from Adrian on Saturday? He's got to have help. He can't press. And give me a prediction here with the type of game you think he can have.
Well, I think the maturity of the third season, and I think that, he's the starter. He's the guy, and I've seen some people say he's going to be on a short leash. I don't believe that. I think the coaches have confidence in him, and he has the experience, and that's not to diminish anything as far as Luke McCaffrey. I'm a big McCaffrey guy. I think what a talented guy, but it's remarkable to have two guys in a situation like this. But I look for a good performance from Adrian, but like you said, it depends on the guys around him, whether that's going to be, whether it's going to really look good or whether it's not going to look so good. If what's happening around him is he's under a lot of pressure, he doesn't have time to look for his receivers and so forth, then that's going to be it. But I look for him to play a fundamentally sound game. He has the experience and he has the ability. Now, can he get some help from the rest of the guys around him?
Help's going to be key. Can't wait for Saturday, 11 o'clock kick. Of course, pregame and pre-show with Hail Varsity Weekend. Real Red Reaction following. Mike Babcock with us here on Hail Varsity Radio at MD Babs on Twitter, and can find Mike, his amazing work, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Babbers, we'll talk soon. We'll talk Friday with the Tailgate Brother, and thanks so much for jumping in.
Hey, great talking to you. We didn't think this was coming, but here it is.
All right. That is awesome. All right. Good stuff from Mike Babcock. We'll talk with Mike Schuart, Wilderness Ridge. Shuey might be wearing a stocking hat, but we'll still get into some golf and some football.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. My Friday partner last week was Mike Schuart. We were out on the deck at Wilderness Ridge. Amazing fall day, way better than this garbage weather-wise today. We say hi to Shuey out at Wilderness. Shuey, you rocking a stocking cap? You doing okay?
Oh, yeah. I'm a little cold. I liked the weather a couple of weeks ago. A lot better than this.
You and me both. Listen, it's great to spend some time with you. Elijah and I always do a steak and a beer bet on Friday. That's been going very well in my favor. But let's have a little fun here for Nebraska, Ohio State, and let's find something to wager on. And you want to do over under 27 points scored by Nebraska.
Over.
So you think Nebraska scores more than 27?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I will take the under. And
that didn't take too long.
No, that's okay. Total yards by Adrian Martinez, let's say 280.
Under.
Okay. And I think that's an under as well. I'm not just handing out wins to Shuey here. How many? What's the most points? And we'll ask Brad Edwards this too. What's kind of the ceiling here? What's danger zone for Ohio State? What's the point total that they can't? What's that ceiling they can't break through? Mid-30s.
Yeah, they can't. For us to have a chance, obviously they can't. So it's like you got to keep them below 40.
Below 40, says Shuey. I don't think that happens. Do you?
I'm banking that it's going to happen because I think they're going to have some turnovers and some special teams blunders.
Really? So you think Ohio State will be a bit sloppy?
I do.
So Shuey says take the points, babe, and run with run with the Huskers to cover. You're excited about football. You love it. And, do you think Nebraska's – what do you think their minds – you've coached a lot of kids, and you've coached a lot of college athletes, and you work with the Divot Dogs, so you're shaping young minds. And you hear the Frost mantra, no fear of failure. Is that something that by year 3 you think is sunk in? Is this squad intimidated? Is Nebraska intimidated going in? I'm asking you to be a psychoanalyst here. Forgive me.
No, I don't think so. That's why playing them first is an advantage because it hasn't really been able to set in a little bit. A couple things. One is if they're really good, they've been able to kind of work things out, do what they do, and kind of dominate people. So you haven't seen that aspect of it. If we're not good or we're really good, we obviously think we're pretty good right now. And if we're not nearly as good as we think we are, well, we haven't proven that yet. So these kids are going in thinking that they have a chance. They're every bit as good. So because they haven't done anything and haven't been shown yet that they're not. Mm-hmm. So I think if things fall right, they can maintain a little of that confidence. They get a turnover here, they make some plays here, they can run the ball. It's like, hey, you know what? That just builds their confidence. So it's like, hopefully that's what I'm hoping happens anyway. Obviously Ohio State's a more talented team than we are on paper, but there's a lot of things that happen off paper that give you a chance to win.
Love it. There we go. Mike Schuart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. And Shuey joins us every Wednesday at 4:40. Shuey, I want to get into to the match. You've got Chuckster, Charles Barkley, and Steph Curry. They're stepping in for Tiger and Tom Brady. You've got Phil and Peyton, and this will be happening on the Saturday after. Is it Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving? I think it's
Saturday.
Saturday, yeah, the 27th. So you got Nebraska and Iowa, and then the following day you'll have Chuck, who's just fantastic, great personality. Steph, who's clearly healed from his wrist injury, to be participating, and then Peyton and Phil. Do you love this matchup? I know we talked about those are the two names that we were interested in seeing, but how do you think this thing shapes up? Are you pretty excited about it?
Yeah, we called that. Man, last year, right after the match was over, we called it. That's how good we are. We called that.
Well, I'm going to say you. I'm going to give it to you, Shuey.
But yeah, it's to me, it's way more entertaining because of the personalities that are playing in it, what they're capable of doing or not capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Chuck obviously is going to be the entertainment of it, just watching him swing. Steph Curry's a really good player. You know, he's better than the other two that they had in there, you know, so it's like, and Phil's always Phil. He's a little bit of a gambler, jokester. And then you have Peyton back in there. So I look for it to be super entertaining. There's going to be some crazy shots hit. So I pity, Chuck's partner, because he's not going to be much help.
Do you think they'll stick Phil and Chuck together?
They have to. Man, they can't put anybody else. I mean, Phil is the one that's got to carry somebody, because Chuck ain't going to do nothing.
Good luck.
Other than hit people, chunk shots.
Mike, in terms of worst golf shots you've ever seen, where does Charles Barkley rate?
He's up there, boy. He's got some nasty ones. So you better keep your head on a swivel, because you never know where it's going to go. So,
but I mean, Chuck used to be okay until he whacked somebody off the box.
Yeah, and then he got the little swing yippies, and those are hard to get rid of. Obviously, because he hasn't got rid of them in I don't know how many years. So he still tries, though. I give him credit for that.
Shuey, I want to end with this, and Mike Schuart's with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey does awesome work, lessons. Of course, Wilderness is just beautiful and phenomenal. Still a couple of days to sneak out. Probably tomorrow. The weather looks money. And, of course, the Divot Dogs, you're working with the young, the golf program that you're just great with. So, interesting story on Aaron Rodgers here. Just his quirky personality, all right, that ESPN has up. And Aaron Rodgers is a karaoke guy, a trivia guy, likes his frat parties, has inner weirdness. Got about 45 seconds. Who's the quirkiest personality that you've been around in golf?
Quirkiest personality. There's some weird dudes out there. A guy named Frank Licklider.
Okay.
He used to drive around from tournament to tournament in his Hummer, all decked out in camo. So, I mean, he was a weird guy. And we used to share books on tape because we drove around a lot. And then he stole all my books on tape.
Oh, no.
Never gave them back. Yeah. And then claims he never did. So it's like, no, I know you did. I gave them to you. So he's a little weird.
So you have the books on tape and the camo Hummer that were just warning signs. That's pretty good.
Got a great story about Aaron Rodgers on the golf course. We'll have to get in that probably next segment.
That'll be good. Shuey, you be good. Enjoy the weather tomorrow, and we'll see you soon, all right?
All right. Look forward to it.
Appreciate you, man. All right, you too. Right. Mike Schuart with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Go see Shuey. Get fit. And get those lessons in. You got a little one that wants to be great at golf, go see Shuey. We'll wind down hour one. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Brad Edwards coming up. College football thoughts, Nebraska, Ohio State. Jacob Padilla on the way. Reminder about West Blue Realty. You want a residential home in Lincoln and the surrounding community, West Blue Realty can take care of you. WestBlueRealty.com. Got to give your friends Tom Luby and Kelly Hofschneider a shout. Dial up Tom today at 402-540-3768 or Kelly Hofschneider. Kelly can help out too at 402-202-2312. It pays to work with West Blue. You mentioned Hail Varsity, and they can provide you up to $1,000 on the closing of your next home purchase. Get an appointment today to see Tom and or Kelly. 1120 K Street, Suite 200. So, you were telling me about Aaron Rodgers, and good story here on ESPN.com just about how quirky. And you've heard that, like Aaron's not close, nor are there Christmas cards or holiday cheers exchanged. It doesn't sound like with Aaron and his family. I know, is he married to or just dating Danica Patrick? I forget. I think that's his gal.
Just dating? You want me to check?
No, you're good. But what were you going to tell me about him on the golf, other than he's really good at golf?
I had this friend who he caddies at this golf course up in Chicago, been doing it for years now. I'm not sure if he still does it, but he used to go back in the summers.
Is his name Danny?
It is not. But anyway, Bo Jackson does his little celebrity golf tournament there every single year.
Yeah.
So he gets a chance to rub some shoulders with some famous people. He's got some good stories, actually. One, he saw Tiger Woods, and Tiger Woods refused to give him an autograph. Anyway, but one day he was caddying for Santonio Holmes. And
guy who shot and maimed himself in the leg.
Yes.
Great wideout from Ohio State.
Yes. Anyway.
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Anyway, this in their same group is Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
And he wasn't personally caddying for Aaron Rodgers, but they're in the same group. And they get to one of the greens, and all the golf bags are sitting there on the edge of the green, and he accidentally backs up into Aaron Rodgers' golf bag and knocks it down into a bunker. And he was like...
with his Bears sweatshirt on.
He was like 13, 14 years old at the time, and apparently Aaron Rodgers was just a complete ass to him the rest of the day. Every single time he got like a new club out of his bag, he was like giving my friend a stare and like kind of giving him a glare and making some comment
Was he
about...
joking or no?
Apparently, it was like, as a 13-year-old, he did not feel any humor in it.
Well, you felt bad. You think you were going to get fired.
But
They were going to make you give the club, T-shirt back.
Yeah, but apparently every single time he went and got a club, he went, I wish this club wasn't so sandy, and would glare over at him.
It's one thing to like mess with a 13-year-old that way and give him the side eye. It's another thing to like make the dude cry.
It was somewhere in between, from what I've heard.
Well, I'll just say that. Don't run his clubs over.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I empathize with Aaron Rodgers, but also whenever you have a 13-year-old who's starstruck, a little tough.
Yeah.
But it's
You
not
gotta screen the caddies better.
I mean, it's not out of character for Aaron Rodgers, though.
Well, he's just kind of a quiet, weird dude. I mean, I'll hear him on McAfee and pretty normal. I mean, I don't know. I got to talk to some folks in a little further detail at some point in my life that are close with Aaron. Because he's fun. He did me a solid. No fantasy points and propelled me to another steak and a beer bet win over Elijah Herbal.
I'm undefeated in fantasy, so if I go winless in the steak and beer bets, I'll take solace in the fact that I am good at fantasy this year.
Good work. Brad Edwards, get his take on Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, and the Big Ten as it gets rolling. Jacob Padilla, next hour. His confidence ranking with position groups for Nebraska football. Hour 2 on the way with Hail Varsity.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Hour 2, great to be back with you. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, ESPN Insider, part of College Game Day. We say hi to Brad Edwards at JBradEdwards on Twitter. The wait is almost over, Brad. It's Nebraska, it's Ohio State. I'm sure that's a top 3 game for you. I don't know if I'm kidding, but I'm anxious about it, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to watching it. I have to admit it's more to see what Ohio State looks like than it is Nebraska on my end. But I'm just looking forward to, one, there being more games played with 2 conferences coming back this weekend. And then, obviously, with the Big Ten being one of them, we got more top 25 teams. And I was looking at the schedule for Saturday. The first 2 windows of games are really good. Actually, it's actually the night that's a little bit lacking in quality as far as the games go. But yeah, those first 2 windows, and especially that noon Eastern, 11 Central window. I remember some years recently with my show being on the air during those games where it was just there was nothing to talk about. And this Saturday, man, there are probably 6 or 7 games going on at that time that I'm looking forward to watching.
Yeah, I can't wait to see around the college football world a really good slate in the Big Ten. And I want to start off with Nebraska. I know you're going to be looking at Ohio State and where are they going to be at out of the gate, because you've got that kind of keeping up with the Joneses playoff picture discussion with Alabama and Clemson, and then Ohio State's part of that discussion. They've just had to wait longer than everybody. So when we look at Ohio State, what are you specifically interested in seeing with the Buckeyes out of the gate, and then let's flip it over to Nebraska as well. What kind of deems a good showing for you with Nebraska? Because, the build is continuing here. It's year 3, and it's a tough opener for Nebraska. So let's look at both sides of the field here with Nebraska and Ohio State as we look at 11 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're looking for with Ohio State is, do they look like they're about as good as they were last year? At least in that ballpark, because what we've seen so far from the 3 power conferences that have played is that Clemson and Alabama just seem to be a notch above everyone else, which isn't a shock. That was kind of what we were expecting coming in. But, Alabama just kind of validated that last weekend against Georgia, and I think you can look around at the rest of the ACC and see that there's no threat to Clemson. So the question is, can you just pencil the 2 of them into the championship game, or is there a third contender out there? And we all suspect that that's what Ohio State is. And look, I know that if you watched those games last Saturday, you probably looked at Clemson and Alabama's offenses and said, how can anyone stop those 2 teams? Well, I think Ohio State's going to be every bit as good as those 2 offensively. And so that's the question that everyone in the Big Ten is going to continue to ask. They were obviously asking it all of last season as well. How can you stop that? And the answer is you can't. You just have to have an offense that can score with it. And then, hopefully you get in a track meet and you get a few service breaks, and that's how you win. So that's really, the first thing is how good does the offense look? And, of course, they have a bunch of guys to replace on defense, and so the question is, are they going to look more like Clemson on defense, which is a team that's pretty similar to the level of dominance it had last year, or are they going to look more like Alabama on defense, where you would say, okay, you know what? If they run into the wrong team in a week when they turn the ball over 3 times, then maybe they could get upset. So that's really what we're looking for with the Buckeyes. And then, with Nebraska, obviously, if they can keep it close, it's going to get people more interested in their games the rest of the way. I don't think anybody's going to hold it against them if they get blown out. But, the biggest news item nationally has been the quarterback situation and the fact that there is apparently a legitimate race there, or a competition, and we'll see if both guys play in this game, and if so, how do they look? And then, moving forward, what does that mean for the Big Ten West? Because as much as FPI loves Wisconsin, FPI sees Wisconsin as a bigger favorite in the West than Ohio State is in the East. I seem to think that's a little bit off, but I've yet to hear any person who covers the Big Ten talk about the Big Ten West and believe that it's hands down Wisconsin. No questions asked. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Nebraska has and whether they might have enough firepower to throw their name into that hat.
It's open. You have Minnesota that got back to full strength, but we'll see who's actually playing for them on Saturday as they open up. They host Michigan, which will be really cool because Minnesota was a really fun team last year, and they had a tough finish, but they won their bowl game, and 11-2 is something you just never sneeze at out of a West team, let alone a team named Minnesota. I think the quarterback situation's funky at Wisconsin with the injury, but the Badgers should reload defensively. I think they return, so it's really not even a reload, but offensive line-wise, and Jonathan Taylor's not there going for 200 a game, so what do they like? But things don't really fall off with Barry Alvarez and Coach Christ. Minnesota's a question mark. Iowa's, I think, really good on the lines of scrimmage, but it just kind of gets into the scheduling side of things. Who's got a more favorable crossover?
Purdue has the schedule, right? Yeah.
Pardon me?
I said Purdue has the schedule.
They have the schedule, and I think Minnesota, of the teams, probably, I know they have a tougher crossover with Michigan, but at least and I know it's a home game, which doesn't mean much in 2020, but I think Wisconsin and Iowa have some tough road travels. So I think Wisconsin's got to go to Michigan this year. So I think Minnesota could maybe survive best, but we'll see. I think their offense with Morgan and the wideouts are pretty impressive in their run game. So I think Minnesota's maybe a lean by some folks, but if Nebraska can get some confidence and hang around, despite the way they open up. It'll be interesting to see where Nebraska can go if they can somehow find a way to 2-2 after 4 games. That's a big ask.
Yeah, I think what's really going to be fun to see with the Big Ten is whether it kind of follows the pattern of the other conferences that have already been playing, in that, you have the elite teams, which have, pretty much looked like you expected them to. But then the rest of the league, it might as well just be the NFL as far as who knows who's going to win in a given day. And that's fun because college football is not always like that. And, I think you're getting some of that in the ACC and the SEC and the Big 12, where some of those teams that are usually like the second tier, not quite playoff caliber, have kind of come back to the pack this year. And so it's made things interesting. So I don't know if you'll see that from, Penn State and Wisconsin, whether they won't quite be as good as advertised. But like you said, there are reasons to believe that could happen with the guys that Wisconsin has to replace and the injury at quarterback. And then obviously Penn State, since the summer has lost arguably its best player on each side of the ball. Maybe not its most important player, but some people would make the argument that Journey Brown was their most talented player on the offensive side. So that's a big hit for them. And of course, it's the same thing that happened in the SEC and the ACC, which is the team that really could have most afforded to lose some players and still be really good, is the team that didn't lose any. So Ohio State had 2 opt-outs. They got both of them back. Alabama and Clemson never had a single guy opt out. So, the rich kind of get richer, but for the rest of them, it should be a pretty fun, competitive season.
Talking with Brad Edwards here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brad, aside from Nebraska, Ohio State, which of the other Big Ten games do you think are most intriguing on Saturday? I know I personally look at that Michigan and Minnesota matchup Saturday night. That one should be a good one. But which of the other games you're watching for and why?
Yeah, I think whenever you get Michigan as an underdog to Minnesota, just because of the names. Like if you watched the teams play last year, that's not a surprise that they would be a small dog in the game. But it is one of those things that when you see it on paper, if you've been watching college football for 20 years or more, it kind of like strikes you as, wow, that's weird. Can that be right? And so I think it'll be fun to see. And we know that, for every game that Michigan loses, those Jim Harbaugh questions are going to start to circulate some more. And so Michigan is always going to be interesting because of that. But I think the game that maybe is the most intriguing to me, because it's maybe the most dangerous for one of the top teams, is Penn State, Indiana. Because Indiana has always been one of those teams that's just very sneakily better than people think. And I know our FBI has Indiana as I believe just inside the top 25, like that caliber team. Whether they're quite that good, I don't know, but they've been so close for quite a while. There are a lot of the teams in the Penn State, Michigan, type caliber that Indiana gives them games. They just usually find a way to lose. And so I think this is a really scary game if you're Penn State and you've got Ohio State the following week, and you want to look ahead to that game. Your fans are already looking ahead to that game. But you don't have a lot of margin for error against Indiana. And so that's the game that I think could end up being the most interesting in the Big Ten on Saturday.
I think you're right on, because Indiana's scoring points. They've played pretty good defense under Coach Allen. They won 8 games last year. And even when Kevin Wilson, who's Ohio State's OC, doing some research, like, oh yeah, Kevin Wilson's there to go spread offense and score 50 on everybody with Justin Fields pulling the trigger. That's one thing Indiana didn't have when he was there. They had NFL dudes and they could score 40 points, and they did a couple of times against Ohio State, but they couldn't stop anybody. They're a little bit more complementary football now with offense and defense. So I think you're right on. That's an upset alert potentially for Penn State, specifically with the look ahead. I want to get into a couple of quarterback questions with Trevor Lawrence, and I saw a couple of NFL guys chime in. Brad, do you think Trevor Lawrence would come back? And I ask that because of who might be picking him. He's having a great time at Clemson. He's been incredible. He's got great support around him. And this is, the old pause button's been hit on eligibility. Not that he's only, a junior anyway. So, any way you think he, it could be that 80-year quarterback that it seems like your rival always had. And I'm wondering that because I don't know, man. Do you want to go play for potentially a really bad team in the Big Apple next year?
Yeah, I think we're probably too soon.
Okay.
We'll probably have the benefit of knowing who's going to have the first pick in the draft by the time he has to make that declaration. And who knows, maybe it is an issue by the time that arrives. But it really is hard to imagine him kind of coming back for one more year, because I know it's not unprecedented. We saw Peyton Manning do it. When he was perfectly, and the one thing about Trevor Lawrence is that I know it's football, okay, and anything can happen, but he's not going to get hit that much playing in the ACC. I know fluky things can still happen where you let a ball go and a guy just kind of rolls into your ankle after the pass or whatever, where you weren't really pressured but you still get hit. But compared to most guys. He's not taking a lot of hits. Most of the hits he does take when he actually decides to run the ball. So from that standpoint, I can see where health might not be a major concern of his as far as an injury. But still, I don't know. I mean, it's just he put in his 3 years. And look, I think you'll have a good idea based on the way that Dabo seems to be treating it down the stretch. Like, I think everyone's assuming it's his last year, and therefore probably his last chance at the Heisman Trophy. And what they did last week, the way that they let him throw in a game that was against a completely overmatched opponent in Georgia Tech, and they don't normally do that. I mean, they win by a lot of big scores, but they usually don't have him go out and throw that much against a team that they know that they're already pounding and that the team can't offer any resistance. But I just wonder, is Dabo trying to get him that Heisman push because he wants him to get that trophy and at the very least get invited to New York? Remember, he didn't even get invited last year.
That's nuts.
Because he had the slow start to the season, and there were just so many other guys who had big years and all that. So I don't know. I just have a feeling, unless he just completely got snubbed from a Heisman standpoint, I don't know what else would be out there that would bring him back.
Brad, less than a minute left here, but really quickly, I want to get your thoughts on another quarterback who's almost assuredly going to be off the board pretty quickly come this next spring in the NFL draft, and that's Trey Lance. He only played in that one game this year for North Dakota State. Do you think that hurts his chances of going early in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly hurts your chances the less that teams have been able to see you. I mean, remember, he hadn't really played that much before, just really 1 year. So, and of course, the level of competition is always going to be a question. I don't think there's anyone doubting whether he has the size and the strength for it. But, the accuracy, I think, is something. I mean, sure, he's thrown, one pick? But that it's more than that when it comes to accuracy. It's being able to put, throws into tight windows consistently like you can see in the NFL. And I don't know how much of that you'd really be able to prove at the FCS level anyway. But he's certainly not going to get a chance to do it. So who knows? I mean, every year there are guys who, seem like they're a little bit of a reach maybe based on what we know about them. But that position just has so much value in the NFL that a lot of teams are willing to take the chance. And he certainly is a guy who looks the part.
Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider. Brad, we'll chat next week. Thanks for the time today.
All right, guys. Take care.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back to it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Let's bring in Jacob Padilla from HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla _ Jacob, excited for football to get here. And I tell you what, intrigued by Saturday. Really enjoyed your story on HailVarsity.com with your confidence rankings. It's been a crazy offseason and crazier camp when it comes to just how much takeaway there is from your intel and also just knowing sports like you do, Jacob. What have you been able to glean for Nebraska as we head into Saturday? And just what are some of your broad ranging thoughts on what 2020 can look like and be for Nebraska?
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing about the season finally getting here for me is the fact that I don't have to write about the offseason anymore and the preseason and all the things that we've been writing for the last 10 months now. I'm pretty much all tapped out on this. Now I need to see some live football here so we can start kind of coming up with new thoughts and getting answers to our questions and all that kind of stuff. So that's beyond actually having something to cover. Like, that is the biggest thing for me about football being back. So very excited about that. Hopefully we can pull this season off with minimal disruptions and everybody's safe and everything. This preseason has been interesting. Obviously, we don't normally get a lot of access to practices and all that, but we get some. We kind of get some insight into who's playing where and what some of the units look like and who's doing well. And we've had none of that this year, obviously. So we've had to rely pretty much entirely on the coaches. And you kind of have to really listen to the question, listen to the way they're answered, try to figure out, all right, who's being brought up unprompted, who are they answering just because they're asked directly about, and kind of who are they not talking about. It's all that stuff you got to have to kind of take into account, because everybody goes in with an idea of, all right, this is what it's going to look like, this is where these guys are going to play, all right, this guy will be an upgrade here, and all that kind of stuff. But until they actually get out on the field, all that is just kind of speculation. And that's kind of the genesis for my story, kind of the column today is leading into this weekend. Right? All right, based on everything we've heard throughout this preseason, here's how I feel about all these different positions. And there are some that I am lower on than I was going to into the fall camp, the delayed fall camp and everything. And there are some others that you kind of feel a little bit better about. And that's kind of, now we get to see, all right, were those feelings justified or not coming up this weekend?
Substance will be great and can take a big dose of that Saturday and beyond. And also got to consider who's on the field with Nebraska. And that's, my mind's really open, and it's not to make too quick a judgments nor overreact, right, for what Saturday is, because no one's really looked 3 games ready for conference play with this jacked up 2020. Jacob Padilla is with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine, talking Nebraska football. So when we talk about your confidence rankings, you go from least confident to most confident, specifically, not to spoil the column because folks need to read it, but who are a couple of position groups that maybe you're not as high on as you were, and who are a couple of position groups, and they may be one and the same, that you think may start off a little sluggish, but man, they could round into some good form?
Yeah, I think the answer to both those questions is the wide receiver group. And I think a lot of us were expecting strides forward on offense this year, even with what they lost from last year's team, in part because we like the way that wide receiver room looks now and how they were able to kind of flip it. And because I talk about this a lot, but a big problem last year with Nebraska's offense is they basically played nothing but slot wide receivers. And they had short, fast guys all over the field, but guys that weren't really able to get open consistently in the positions they were playing, and guys that Adrian Martinez was struggling to find outside of J.D. Spielman and Wandale Robinson to some degree. So you thought coming in, some of the guys they brought in were guys like Omar Manning is obviously the big one, but Xavier Batts and Alante Brown and all these guys, you add those guys to the mix, now you've got some different size wide receivers and different skill sets to go with a talented slot receiver in Wandale Robinson, who you expect to play more wide out this year. as opposed to playing in the backfield as much as he did last year. So I really liked the way that looked on paper, and I thought that would help a guy like Adrian Martinez have a bounce-back year and be more effective through the pass because he has different kinds of receivers that he can go to. And the problem is a lot of those guys that we thought would make a difference this year, those aren't the guys that the coaches are bringing up. We're hearing the names of a lot of walk-ons, and a guy like Levi Falk, grad transferring from South Dakota, keeps popping up, and Wyatt Lever, who's been in the program a couple of years, out of O'Neill, a walk-on, and obviously Cade Warner was placed on scholarship, but he's been a walk-on the last couple of years, and as reliable as he is, he's not exactly a dynamic threat, or at least hasn't proven to be to this point in his career. So you kind of that and a guy like Alante Brown, in addition to Omar Manning and guys like that, have been kind of in and out of practice with injuries here and there. That's never a good sign to hear. So that whole picture is just a little bit worrisome to me, especially going up against a team like Ohio State, who's always going to have athletes out there in the secondary. So is Nebraska going to be able to have enough talent out there at wideout in this game to keep the defense honest and spread things out and allow Dedrick Mills to be effective in the run game? Or are they going to have guys that are going to get locked up and allow Ohio State to put a safety or two in the box and make things tough? So that's right now. I don't love what I heard about that position heading into preseason, but all those guys are still on the team right now. And I think some of them are freshmen and a lot of them are newcomers. So they've got a chance to kind of figure things out and get healthy and really learn the playbook and earn the trust of the quarterback and the coaches. And I think we could still see a dynamic group of pass catchers down the line, but I'm just worried about what that looks like heading into Ohio State.
You know, it might be soon to ask him to be, I don't know, all Big Ten good in game one. Jacob Padilla is with us. Where are you at? Where are you at with Chris Hickman, his role, and what could he do for the offense with his size and skill set, because he's big and he's physical and he's fast?
Yeah, that's another guy that you kind of expected to be part of that mix, and we haven't really heard a ton about him either. He's not a guy that the coach has really brought up on talented. So that's one where I'm not quite sure where he falls into the mix. But I think one thing we do know is they like him as a blocker based on kind of the usage we saw for him last year, where they kind of put him in some different spots, put him in the backfield a little bit to kind of lead the way, put him kind of in line, split him out wide. So I think he's a guy that'll be in that mix. Obviously the height you like out there at 6'6" or so. He's a guy you can kind of throw it up to a little bit potentially. We'll see kind of what separation he can get at wideout compared to tight end. But I think he's a guy that'll be in that mix for the blocking, if nothing else. And that's kind of I think, part of the reason we're hearing guys like Falk and Warner and these other guys brought up so much is what they've shown as blockers. And I think this team does want to be a run-first team. And if you can't block out there on the perimeter, they're going to have a hard time making you a big part of what they do. So from that perspective, maybe that's kind of where Hickman is able to jump into that mix. And then if he's out there kind of blocking, you never know, might have a chance to make a big play here or there when they do go through the air. So that whole wideout room, there's a lot of different guys that I could see making an impact this year. And at this point, I'm just not quite sure what that depth chart and kind of what that rotation looks like.
Jacob, got about 3 minutes, so I got to squeeze in just the front seven defensively. Are you is that unit, when I look at the front seven, the line and the backers, are they a group that you think there's guys ready to emerge, or are there more questions?
Yeah, there are guys at each of those spots that I really like and I think have a chance to be very good. It's just that they have a lot to prove. And even a guy like JoJo Doman, who has shown how much of a playmaker he can be, he's got to show that he can be reliable and make the simple plays as well as kind of the splash ones. And they got to figure out, is Caleb Tanner ready to be the guy they need to be, or are they going to have to rotate some other guys in there to get kind of the pass rush that they need? I like Garrett Nelson, but sophomore, he's kind of somewhat similar to Doman in the fact that he's got to kind of keep learning how to do his job on every single possession beyond just kind of playing hard. defensive line. I think Ben Stille is going to have a big year. I'm confident in him. The rest of that group, I think they've got some guys that can be good, but are they going to be good right away? Is Ty Robinson ready to be a game-changing player? Is Keem Green kind of in position here now where he can be a big part of that? Is Damian Daniels ready to play a significant amount of snaps? There are a lot of questions at those spots. And then inside linebacker, too. And I like Colin Miller. I like his upside. Will Honus has played a lot of football, and we're hearing a lot about Luke Reimers, and we like his upside. But last year, inside linebacker was a big weakness for this team. They got picked on in coverage on third down a lot. Their run fits were inconsistent, and that was a big part of why you had 3 NFL guys up front and still gave up over 5 yards a carry. So there are so many questions at those spots. I don't think that the talent is missing there. I think they've got enough guys that could potentially be good players to allow them to take strides on defense, but they've got to go out and prove it now. It's hard to know exactly who those guys are going to be that rise to the occasion.
Jacob Padilla is with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Jacob, about a minute, your reaction to Bryce McGowan's having Nebraska in his top 5.
Yeah, obviously good work by the staff here to kind of get in that mix. 5-star guard. Obviously his older brother Trey is on the team and just got his waiver to play this season. He knows Elijah Wood, who's also on the team, is a freshman now. So the coaches are doing a good job of leveraging kind of what they've got to get in the mix here. And once they got their foot in the door, they've shown McGowan's enough to continue considering them. Obviously, Nebraska's never landed in the recruiting website era, never landed a 5-star player out of high school. So until it happens, I think you can always still be a little hesitant to go all in, but they're doing what they need to be in this down to the end. And coming off of some of the struggles they've had recruiting to get this thing off the ground here, to land Wilhelm Breedenbach and then potentially being it to the end here with Bryce McGowan, I think that's showing some really good progress by their group, especially the fact that they haven't been able to get on the court and show how much progress the program has made from year 1 to year 2 yet.
Jacob, awesome stuff. We'll talk again soon, and thanks for your input today.
All right, sounds good.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday at Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us. Dr. Ben, how you doing?
Doing well, Chris. How about yourself?
Doing all right, man. Ready for some football, but the Fall Classic is upon us, and Cody Bellinger put a scare into a lot of Dodger fans 2 nights ago with the the home run celebration in Game 7 against Atlanta. That right shoulder popping out of socket. Now, Bellinger looked great last night when he went yard with that just wicked follow-through with his swing. I mean, he is beautiful to watch just swing out of his shoes. And I was interested here from a stability standpoint and, 6 more games to go, potentially 3 more games to go, potentially for the Dodgers. But Dr. Ben, let's spend a little bit of time just about that shoulder stability and all that you're asked to do on the diamond defensively, and then swinging the bat here. What's the outlook like for Dodger star Cody Bellinger here to stay healthy?
Yeah, well, just from watching last night, it looks like he was doing fine. To his benefit, the position where you get with your arm when you actually dislocate or it pops out generally is not going to put him in that position when he's batting or when he's really probably doing much in terms of the fielding. If you actually watch the video where he dislocated, his arm was kind of out and up above his head, and that's generally the position where you'll get in that dislocation type of position. And so hopefully, they'll probably put some type of brace on him and educate him a lot in terms of avoiding those types of positions while he's playing.
Dr. Ben Woodhead's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday. We're talking Cody Bellinger. And now the appropriate adjustment was made when it comes to home run celebrations. The foot tap, the ode to kid and play. But you look at that right shoulder, and when it pops out, it's not new. I mean, this has happened before to Cody Bellinger, and it didn't faze him turning around a 98-mile-per-hour fastball. Is this something that he'll eventually look at in the offseason to fix if it keeps popping out, or is he just going to go and go Mel Gibson here and Lethal Weapon and just do tricks at parties for people with the old shoulder dislocation?
I hope he's not doing that in terms of tricks at parties. But,
me neither, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, guys like this, where they do have this recurrent instabilities or recurrent dislocation type of episodes, you know, once it's happened and that train started going, they're certainly at a higher risk for that to happen again. Kind of the natural progression for people that have these types of episodes is that it takes less and less over time for them to dislocate. So you hear about the injuries maybe when somebody's being tackled or they fall on their arm, and it takes a big traumatic incident to dislocate the first time. Well, once you tear those ligaments in that labrum, it takes less and less over time. And so if he puts himself in those positions that place him at risk for it, he's likely going to have, you know, easier chance for that shoulder to pop out. Obviously, it's been bothering him for some time. He said in his interview that it's happened over the months or years, or I'm not entirely sure when it's happened, but he certainly is going to be at a risk if this continues to happen until he gets it fixed. I would imagine that if it continues to be unstable in the off season, he'll probably take a hard look at getting it fixed.
What is that process like, Dr. Ben, to get it fixed from is it just a heal up type deal, or are we at the point of medical procedure?
Well, usually the first line for shoulder dislocations is to get into physical therapy, start working on the muscle stabilizers that strengthen the shoulder to help compensate while the rest of the shoulder injury area kind of scars down and helps the shoulder be stable. If therapy does not work in keeping that shoulder stable and these athletes continue to dislocate, then the next step is certainly going into surgery, tightening the ligaments around the shoulder in order to keep that ball where it belongs in the socket. And so back in the day, you used to have a big open incision where you would go in and you'd have to tack all that down. Nowadays, you can actually go in there with a scope and make 3 or 4 separate poke holes, and you can tighten those ligaments up around the shoulder now. And medical advancements have certainly been huge for these types of procedures, as well as helping these athletes get in to recover quicker.
Dr. Ben Woodhead's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, Jock Doc Wednesday. Cody Bellinger, our topic, and that shoulder stability. So tell me a little bit about his brace, what you perceive that he may be wearing, and just how that helps, but also from a comfort in a free flowing. And again, he didn't look bad last night swinging away, but just what's he dealing with as far as just from a precautionary standpoint?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when people dislocate, and it sounded like he did truly dislocate, they had to take him into the locker room, put it back into place. A lot of times you actually take a couple weeks off, start doing rehab, working on the range of motion as the swelling goes down. Now he's in the World Series, and we're in a whole different scenario, and so he doesn't have time for that. So I'm sure they're working on him round the clock, likely resting him, I would imagine, in between games and not going very hard in terms of other types of activities. And then they'll put him in the brace likely while he's playing. The brace goes around the shoulder, and there's different types that you can use, but it helps keep that shoulder stable and help keeps him comfortable. And I'm sure they're doing a lot of educating as well, just to explain, hey, you know, if you get your hand overhead or in certain types of positions, it's going to place you at a higher risk for that shoulder being unstable. And so he's going to try and avoid those positions, obviously, because that'll place him at a risk of that popping out.
You know, it was interesting. There was a play in center where the ball got smoked and he ran it down, but he didn't make the catch. And it's an unfamiliar ballpark because everybody's in Arlington. So how, it's not Dodger Stadium, or it's not a familiar National League park per se. So there was a play last night that they didn't give him an error on, but it turned out being an extra base hit. Didn't matter. It was 8-3. But just between his caution for the shoulder and just, his range of motion where that right-handed glove is at, I thought that may have played something, and I'm reading into it, but I thought that may have played something into him not tracking that ball down just because of the danger zone going into the wall and him being dinged on top of it. Do you think that maybe affected or could affect his defense in the outfield?
Absolutely. I think it certainly could play a role. And, this is fresh in his mind because this only happened a couple days ago. And so anytime, even though he's a world-class athlete, anytime he gets in that position of where it makes him feel uncomfortable, like he's going to dislocate again, he's probably going to hold back just a little bit. So, the mind is a very dangerous thing. When you've had a prior injury like that, he's certainly going to be gun-shy when he gets in those positions.
Dr. Ben Woodhead's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday, and Cody Bellinger looked fantastic last night despite the shoulder issue and separation, I should say dislocation, not separation, in Game 7. And Dodgers get rolling Game 2 against Tampa. Dr. Ben, great to get caught up with you. We'll do it again soon.
Hey, my pleasure, Chris. Thanks again.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. Good stuff from Jacob Padilla and Brad Edwards, Mike Babcock, and Shuey. And we are loaded up for tomorrow on the show. Gary Barnett, Bill Bender, and Dave Biddle, Buckeye Insider from Bucknuts. A little Brandon Vogel love tomorrow. And then Friday again at Kincaidor, brewing down in the Haymarket Friday, Roadshow Friday. And the good folks from Broken Bow. As Kincaidor's got the Hail Varsity Ale, the Hail Ale. Elijah, have you tried that stuff yet?
I have. Yeah. My dad picked up a couple 6-packs this weekend as a reason to get me over to his house, So
if the food and the smoking and the grilling doesn't do it for you, it's got to be beer.
Yeah, and all in combo, how could I say no?
No, that's awesome.
So I thought they really tried it. It's easy drinking.
Yeah.
But it's better than your bottom shelf beer that a college student would be used to,
Sure. Well, and if Dad's buying a 12-pack of that for you, you got to give Dad a hug on that one.
Oh yeah. I mean, free beer. Come on now.
We'd show up to Dad's house and he would make us put 5 or 10 in on it. Or it was no, that Grey Goose is not for you. All right, you get the well treatment. I'm kidding at all, but no, that's awesome. Having a chance to have some Hail Ale with Papa Bear, that's really cool, man. And excited for being out at Kincaidor on Friday. Reminder about buckling up here. Your friends at the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety. 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska not wearing their seatbelt. If used properly, seatbelts can reduce risk of injury or fatal injury by up to 60%. Your best defense in any crash, buckling up. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So you watching a little World Series tonight?
A little bit, but if this weather holds off, it's playoff time for my intramural softball team, and it's senior year. I got to go get an intramural championship before I graduate.
This ain't intramurals, brother, except for you. Good for you. You since you're tall, are you at first?
I am at first. It's a good call. I'm also batting 10th because you get 10 players in softball, so I'm turning over the order. I'm just gonna look on the bright side.
Is that kind of like, well, we've got to clean up hitter every 4 spots in the lineup type deal, or is softball just something you do for the camaraderie?
I'm a great guy in the field. We'll say that.
Okay, so you're a defensive specialist.
Yeah, at the at the plate. Just was never my strong suit.
But it's not. I mean, it's slow pitch, right?
Oh yeah, it's slow pitch.
Well, you should be able to hit, or do you just try and swing for the fences every time?
Oh, I swing for the fences every time. Are you kidding me?
Have you hit any out?
No. No. We play with the 325-foot fence, which is a lot for softball.
Oh, yeah.
And it's way too much for me. I'm nice at hitting lazy pop flies to left field.
You're the sac fly guy, and you're a defensive specialist versus the other side of things where you can swing the stick, but you're a butcher in the field, and they got to hide you.
The old Nick Gregeth.
No, I think Nick's pretty.
I'm just
I think Nick's pretty good at both.
I mean, his team finished what? Second in the
second in the world.
Oh my god!
But you've got guys like Domain and Mizuno, and got a squad. That's a good softball squad. Back at you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in.